Right now, the world's most powerful economies are at a real crossroads. As their leaders get ready for the next G20 summit, they're facing a world that feels like it's fracturing. And this isn't just another meeting. This is a huge test of whether global cooperation can even survive.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? I mean, with nations basically building economic walls instead of bridges, and the gap between the rich and poor getting wider every day, the whole idea of working together, well, it feels like it's on life support. So can a group like the G20 actually get us back on track? Or is it, just a leftover from a time when we all got along a little better? Let's dive in and break down what's really at stake here.
And look, this isn't just some abstract statistic. This is the human cost of a broken system. The G20's own data is telling us that 733 million people went hungry last year. This didn't just happen. This is a direct result of the exact kinds of problems that global cooperation is supposed to prevent.
And this breakdown has a price tag. And it's one you might actually feel in your own wallet. Take something like unilateral tariffs. That's a perfect example of a country deciding to just go it alone. In the US, policies like these have added an estimated $2,400 to the average family's annual costs. It's a pretty clear reminder that when you build economic walls, you're not just keeping others out, you're locking yourself in with higher prices.
This all leads to what a lot of experts are calling a polycrisis. And this quote just nails it. The idea is that it's not one single problem. It's this whole tangled mess of them: inflation, debt, shaky supply chains, and they're all feeding off each other. This is the storm the G20 is supposed to be navigating.
Okay, so we've laid out the storm. Now let's talk about the ship that's supposed to get us through it. What exactly is the G20, and is it still the right tool for the job?
So, what is the G20? Well, in a nutshell, it's pretty much the main stage for the world's economic teamwork. It brings the leaders of the 20 biggest economies together. We're talking about the established players and the big emerging ones to try and coordinate on policy and solve these huge global problems together.
And the thing is, the G20 has a track record. It's actually proven it can work. It was born out of the Asian financial crisis back in 1999, but its real moment in the spotlight was 2008. The world economy was staring over a cliff, and the G20 stepped up. They coordinated this massive $1.1 trillion response that, by most accounts, literally pulled the world back from a second Great Depression. It was a huge, powerful example of what can happen when everyone decides to act together.
And what really makes the G20 special, its secret sauce if you will, is its diversity. Unlike older, more exclusive clubs like the G7, the G20 brings major emerging economies right to the head of the table. And this isn't just for show. It gives countries from the global south a real voice in the decisions, which leads to solutions that are, frankly, more representative and more effective for everybody.
So how is the G20 planning to tackle this whole polycrisis thing? Well, it starts with a pretty big shift in thinking, putting people first.
Okay, a key part of this is something called social protection floors. I know, it sounds a little jargony, but the idea behind it is actually really simple and pretty powerful. It just means that every country should have a basic safety net in place, things like access to essential healthcare and a minimum income, to make sure nobody falls through the cracks, especially when a crisis hits.
And make no mistake, the goal here is massive. We're not just talking about handouts. This is about building a world that's just fundamentally more resilient. The thinking is, if you protect the most vulnerable people, you build a foundation that can handle shocks, you cut down on inequality, and you create stable long-term growth for all.
But, and this is a big but, this slide really shows you the huge gap between that goal and where we are right now. Globally, a little over half the world has some kind of coverage. But look at Africa, less than 20%. And for low-income countries, a shockingly low 9.7%. That's not a statistic, that's a massive gulf of inequality that the G20 has to figure out how to cross.
Right, but here's the thing. Those social safety nets, they can't just exist in a vacuum. You need a stable global economy to even make them possible. And that brings us to the second major part of the G20's action plan, shoring up the foundations of the whole economic system. And really, when you get down to it, leaders are facing a clear choice between two very different futures. On one side, you've got unilateralism. Every nation for itself, throwing up tariffs and breaking up trade. We've already seen how that leads to higher costs and more instability. Or there's the other path, multilateralism. This is what the G20 is pushing for. It's about working together, coordinating our actions to create stable markets and growth that actually benefits everyone.
And a perfect example of what this looks like in the real world is the push for something called Pillar 2 of the Global Tax Agreement. Basically, the whole idea is to set up a global minimum tax for multinational corporations. It's designed to stop these huge companies from stashing their profits in tax havens and to end what they call the race to the bottom on tax rates, so that these corporations finally pay their fair share.
So all of this, it's all building up to the next big moment. And all eyes are now turning to Johannesburg, South Africa, because that's where these ideas are really going to be put to the test.
As the G20 presidency gets handed over from Brazil to South Africa, it marks a truly historic shift. For the very first time, the summit is going to be held on African soil. And this is so much more than just a change of scenery. It's a huge, powerful recognition of Africa's growing importance on the world stage.
And just look at the theme that the South African presidency has chosen: solidarity, equality, and sustainability. That really signals a clear direction, doesn't it? It connects right back to that idea of putting people first, promising to focus on the issues that matter to everyday citizens.
Yeah, the leadership in South Africa is making it crystal clear they want to shift the G20's focus. They want to put the priorities of the Global South front and center, to treat social issues with the same importance as financial ones, and, this is a big one, to bring the voices of regular people and civil society into the room. It's a real effort to make the G20 a more inclusive group, one that's actually grounded in what people are experiencing every day. And you know, when you boil it all down, this is what it's all about. This quote is such a good reminder of what the G20 was supposed to be from the start. It wasn't created to just be a talking shop. It was made to take a crisis and find an opportunity, and to build an economy that works for everybody, not just for a few at the top. That's a call to action that feels more urgent right now than maybe ever before.
And so, that leaves us with one final and really critical question. The G20 proved back in 2008 that unity is its superpower. So as the world watches Johannesburg, will its leaders find that collective strength again? Or are they going to let fragmentation win? The decision they make there won't just define this one summit, it could very well define our future.